are listening to The World Between Worlds, the podcast where four crazy Star Wars fans are marathoning all of Star Wars in chronological order. Droid invasion on Ryloth. We follow our characters Anakin and Ahsoka, Obi-Wan and his clone battalion, and finally get some insight into Mace Windu this week as the Separatists make their final play to take Ryloth and the Republic makes their final play to take it back. My name is Yates.
I'm Jessica.
And I'm Keats.
If you're just tuning into us now, we are talking about Season 1, Episode 19, Storm Over Ryloth, Season 1, Episode 20, Innocence of Ryloth, and Season 1, Episode 21, Liberty on Ryloth. And, this is basically a Season 1 finale. We've made it through the first season of Clone Wars, and this is our 10th episode. So, we're celebrating that.
We kicked Jordan off the podcast in celebration.
Yeah, we figured, what better way to celebrate than by rooting out
the weakest
one of our key
link.
members.
Yeah, exactly. Bye, Jordan. See you in hell.
See you in hell, boys.
No, we miss Jordan. I'm so sorry I wasn't here to talk about, didn't get to bust out his nerd chops talking about Mace Windu. I'm, sorry, Jordan.
We'll see you next time,
We'll see you next time. But this week, there's a lot to talk about. Keats, would you like to start us off with the first episode, Storm Over Ryloth?
Sure. And one thing that I noticed about this episode immediately was how much it ties into last week's episodes, where this is a very Ahsoka-centric episode, and Ahsoka last week put her whole life on the line and almost died for Padme. And I remember last week I was like, I really hope Ahsoka gets some kind of promotion for what she did here, and she definitely did, because now she's in charge of a whole squadron and is leading them into battle without the protection of Anakin Skywalker.
That definitely makes it, to me, when I was watching it, it really felt like a season finale, because it was just like, okay, we're introduced to Ahsoka at the beginning, and now we're at a point where,
we can trust her. And it's really cool to see her first mission without being supervised, because she's like very headstrong, but at the same time she's really worried she's going to mess it up. But then when she finally gets in there, she's she messes it up pretty bad.
Ahsoka, I am very disappointed in you. You not only disobeyed the Admiral, you disobeyed me.
I thought I could knock out those battleships, so when Master Obi-Wan arrived, he could get through.
I know you meant well, Snips, but there's a bigger picture that you're not aware of. First rule of war, listen and obey your superiors.
But sometimes you get carried away.
All that means is that I understand what you're going through.
And she ends up paying the biggest price of having to live through it and seeing some of her fellow soldiers die in the middle of the battle.
Under her orders. So
Usually she has like a foil. She's like really headstrong, and then she has a more seasoned Jedi being like, no, don't do this.
Yeah.
But this time she's just all by herself being headstrong, and she doesn't have anyone to hold her back, and she has to pay the consequences of that. And then she ends up holding herself too much back.
Yeah, and right on top of that, I was thinking about your statement. I believe it was episode 4 when we were discussing the Malevolence arc, and you were talking about how you thought this was that was the first episode where you felt like that there were true stakes. And I agreed to a certain extent, but here I was on the edge of my seat. In reality, I was, because we had the time to see Ahsoka grow from the first day as a Padawan to her with her first responsibility, and seeing people die next to her left and right was a severe, it was a big panic attack. I obviously knew she wasn't gonna die in the season 1 finale, but it definitely felt like the stakes were there. This was definitely probably the most stakes I've felt in an episode so far.
And there was certainly a lot of collateral damage just beyond the lives of Ahsoka's soldiers, because you see 2 of the Star Destroyers of Anakin's fleet blow up.
But I also wonder if part of why this episode works is because she's not killing 2 ships full of humans.
Yeah.
She's killing 2 ships full of clones.
Right, true.
Yeah, and that's why we as viewers just don't have to feel remorse, really, if we don't want to. We can choose not to.
Yeah, but as adult viewers, I think
the
growing thing is that oh man, I love the droids. Why do they all have to die? Even last episode with you with the rabbit droid, it's there's as adults we're a little more projecting on the clones and droids as more human than the movies perhaps wanted us to. Even that more so. I feel like because it's a kid's show, it's kind of downplayed, but like that's 2 whole ships of like soldiers that just exploded in connection.
I don't think we've ever seen that before.
Yeah, and like they don't really talk about it. Anakin's just like, oh yeah, those couple soldiers were pretty bad, huh? But in the back of his mind, he's like, oh my god, I lost 2 ships.
Yeah, I feel like you see stuff like that more in like the movies, where it's like massive parts of the fleet are damaged, and it's like a big like tactical problem. But Anakin doesn't freak out, surprisingly.
That's true. Yeah, because
I think he wants to at first, because he's like really, before he sees Ahsoka, he's like, where is she? In like a very aggressive way. But then he sees her and she's like about to cry. And so he's like, I need to approach this a different way, which is, for Anakin, that's a pretty mature way of handling things.
Yeah, it is kind of weird, and I've thought about this the past couple episodes that were a bit Anakin-centric, because Anakin's whole thing is like, he doesn't want to lose people, he's afraid of people dying around him, but he's in a war, so people are constantly dying all around him, always.
But I failed.
It was a trap, Snips. It wasn't your fault.
I lost so many of my pilots.
Take heart, little one. That's the reality of command.
Felt this way last way about the virus episode, where it's like there's more than just like Ahsoka and Padme at stake, and in other episodes as well, where like how does his psychology like allow for him to, you know, feel that way about Ahsoka, but like also to sort of disregard all the ships that are blowing up around him. It does seem a little strange.
In a way, though, he gives her like what he needs. You know,
what he gives Ahsoka what he needs for himself?
No, he gives Ahsoka what like he would need if he was in Ahsoka's position.
I thought the exact same thing when I saw the episode.
OMG!
But just like Anakin is sort of like trying to like it's like he's almost like trying to teach himself, because when he approaches Ahsoka, like his whole figuring out of where to move forward after the disaster is weird. Like Ahsoka's mission fails. They lose soldiers, they lose ships, and Ahsoka herself is taking it pretty heavy. It's like, you know, she's taking it as her failure alone.
She thinks that she can't be trusted.
Yeah, and she can't trust herself. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
But she really like needed this, to be honest. I feel like everyone was constantly telling her like, stop being so headstrong, listen, and she like never really could. And this episode she finally was able to like see what the consequences were of like always being like that. But instead of like rubbing it in her face and being like, I told you so, Anakin like I think he responds like really well.
Yeah, because I think last week she really proved herself, and I don't think she sees that in herself yet. I don't think that she's like aware of how capable she is, but I think Anakin definitely, being one of the people who wasn't affected by the virus, was able to look at it from an outsider's perspective and see how capable Ahsoka was here. Yeah. So I think this is definitely a direct follow-up more than most episodes to the Blue Shadow virus.
Sure, but you know, I also think it's a good lesson for like kids to see, because Ahsoka is like the kid in this scenario, and like we're seeing it from a lot of the story from her point of view, and you know the audience for Clone Wars is for kids. And I think a lot of kids can like relate to Ahsoka, like being reckless, being headstrong, like jumping into situations without a plan, and just like fighting. And I think it's good to like show Ahsoka and the whole audience that you know there's going to be consequences.
Yeah, how recklessness can turn on you for the worst.
Yeah, and like the whole idea of the war, I daydream about fighting in a war. Oh, please send me to the front lines. Right. Like, you know, like oh, maybe like there's, you know, this isn't as pretty as you think it is going to be. Like Ahsoka thinks she's more capable than she is.
Yeah, she's all spirit and no experience. But like, instead of draining her spirit and limiting her from more experience, Anakin like is like, okay, well, your spirit is damaged, time to like have some more experience right now. And he like kind of doubles down, and you know, I guess because this is a TV show, they just wrote it in a way where she succeeded. Who knows if it would actually work out like that in real life, but it ended up, you know, working out well.
I remember watching it and I was thinking, and I think you mentioned the same thing, where Anakin kind of comes back at her with like a follow-up plan on how to attack for a second time in a successful way, and she's kind of like, we can't do that. Yeah. And so in my head, I was like, that's Anakin being completely reckless and not learning his lesson that Ahsoka went through.
Yeah, exactly. And Ahsoka does like full on like
clash for one of the first times.
Yeah.
Ahsoka, we have to break that blockade. The Twi'leks on Ryloth are depending on us.
I understand that, Master, but we've lost so many men. Did we get more support?
No. We have to make do with the forces we have. And I need to come up with a plan.
You don't even have a plan?
Don't worry, Ahsoka.
No! That's what you said last time, and now everyone's gone. My whole squadron.
Ahsoka.
We can't just smash through that blockade.
You know, applying force one way didn't work, and now you're applying force another way, and it's going to yield the same results. And like going back to the Malevolence arc, which was another like war-centric episode, the Anakin-centric episode of that arc.
I was thinking about that a lot during this one.
Yeah, Anakin is strong enough to take on the entire fleet himself because he's just that good a pilot and just that fierce a warrior. But the rest of the clones like couldn't keep up with him, and the strategy was never going to work because Anakin's expectations were unrealistic. And now Ahsoka's in the exact same situation. And like Ahsoka's like, wait, remember like this, like we keep running into this problem. And Anakin's like, oh, wow, I guess you're right, man. And so he like goes away and thinks about it and then comes back with his new plan, which is the sneaky, more economic plan. Well, not necessarily more economic because he blows up his own ship in order to defeat the Separatists. But.
Yeah, it still has like a little hint of like, why are you trusting Ahsoka still? But it's a lot smarter this time around.
Mm-hmm. There's definitely like some suspension of disbelief in this episode where it's just like, oh,
if this were real, this wouldn't work.
Like it's just like written this way.
Mm-hmm. And I know, Keith, you also wanted to talk about the clones also, like Anakin purposefully like to, I guess, kind of like to boost her self-esteem and like put her in front of everyone. It's like, Ahsoka, you're in charge of the ship now. You're the commanding officer. All the clones listen to Ahsoka. And the clones sort of have mixed reactions in terms of how to do that.
I mean, yeah, Anakin says the clones are counting on you, and then if you go back to what she failed at before, that was a scenario where the clones were counting on her then. So she really needs to learn not just how to fix things internally, but also how to fix things in a way that'll help everyone. And Anakin was really smart to put himself in a scenario where he has to put trust in Ahsoka with his own life, because obviously, if you look at this from a realistic perspective, Anakin's very capable of like taking care of himself because he's literally just in an escape pod, but he can totally like hijack a ship if he wanted to, or do something to get himself out of that situation. But he purposefully stays there for Ahsoka to handle this.
Well, and that was another thing that was weird to me about how Anakin approaches it, and it's sort of like he's almost like trying to teach himself. Ahsoka like is feeling like the burden of having human life in her hands, and Anakin's answer to that, and I think it's totally reflective of Anakin's psychology, is just, oh, you need to feel this responsibility even more. Like, okay, now you have to save my life too, which is like total Anakin, I think, being afraid of losing his mom, being afraid of losing Padme. It's just like, that's his answer is, you gotta try harder. Like, that's Anakin, in a nutshell, I think, was like that decision.
I wasn't strong enough to save you, Mom.
In Storm over Ryloth, we know that they're trying to open up a pathway to get to the planet of Ryloth. And Ryloth is the homeworld of the Twi'leks. We saw it before in the episode Supply Line way earlier. I want to say it was episode 4 that we did here on the podcast. And that was the objective, but there wasn't a single Twi'lek on screen in that first episode. Right off the bat, the second episode, Innocence of Ryloth, is that, and I believe the main focus of the story was dealing exactly with that, dealing with the human element or the humanist element that gets sort of overlooked when the show is about essentially battle of the week. Like go into this city, there's a battle, go into this city, Count Dooku's there, they gotta fight, go into the city, Asajj Ventress is breaking into here. Now it's like,
and I definitely think that's the show at this point, that's the show's like biggest issue, is like it not being humanist enough.
So Innocence of Ryloth and the entire Ryloth arc, it's the final statement, I think, of the version of the show that we're talking about, which is like cut to a different city, and this is an entire invasion told like over 3 episodes. Very simple objective. Obi-Wan and his clone battalion, led by Commander Cody, are trying to destroy the like mortar cannons that the Separatists have that are precluding the full-on invasion to start. These are, I guess, they're the best mortar cannons of all time because the Star Destroyers can't land, and until the mortars are taken care of. So Obi-Wan leads like a guerrilla ground assault, and the attack starts in an abandoned town on Ryloth. It's a civilian area, and it's been totally decimated, and that's sort of how the episode starts off. Then once the battle ends, the clones break off, and the sort of real stars of the episode come to the forefront, and that's two clone characters.
Oil and Waxer.
Yeah, Boyle and Waxer, yeah.
Is it Boyle or Oil?
It's Boyle.
Oh, yeah, I love how his name is Boyle.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite things. I just love all of the clone names.
Yeah, they are pretty good.
And Boyle just works. I don't know why it works, but it works.
Nara?
Now, I'm Waxer. He's Boyle.
Nara.
Oh, you made a friend. Mission accomplished. Can we go now?
So they do a reconnaissance mission. They find out that the Twi'leks are being held prisoner and that it's not going to be very easy to destroy the mortars. They first have to save the Twi'leks first. But in addition to that, the real heart of the episode is that Boyle and Waxer, in their sort of investigation where they break off, they discover a young Twi'lek girl that has been sort of abandoned and has been presumably living in the ruins by herself. And I really think that the heart of the episode is how the clones interact with and like try and empathize with the girl, because at the start it's clear that they don't have a lot of experience with this, and that the clones are sort of desensitized. And we talk about all the time, especially in the Clone Cadets episode, how the clones have a very insular existence. They live amongst each other, and they grow up in Camino in almost in a literal like
They're pods.
Yeah, in a literal pod, in that they're like they only know that place, and then they're like on the front lines of war. So at the very start, either Boyle or Waxer, I forget. There's one that's hard and there's one that's soft.
Boyle's soft.
Boyle's soft. Okay, and Waxer's hard.
Yeah.
Okay. So Waxer then is the
Thinking
hard
about
one.
boiling eggs.
Waxer's the hard one.
Boil on your face.
Okay,
It's
got
soft.
it. Okay, got it. So yeah, Waxer at the very beginning is like,
He's like, oh, those tailheads, blah, blah. It's very like stereotypical like American
Yeah.
soldier
I mean,
of
he
like.
even had like the porn mustache, is like the macho.
yeah,
Yeah.
kind of, maybe Vietnam, kind of like, if he's got a little 70s porn stash and he's got
or I was thinking towel heads.
oh yeah,
Like tail heads, towel
Oh my God.
heads.
I don't know how I didn't think that.
yeah.
Because I just thought about it right now. As
Yeah,
we're
I guess
speaking.
it does
Expose the truth.
expose the truth. Okay.
Speak truth to power.
They wanted to communicate towel heads. You're probably right. And in addition, I thought the architecture of Ryloth was interesting. It kind of looked sort of like Mesoamerican kind of.
There's flutes. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, but it definitely like sort of a lot of sort of indigenous American
Yeah.
sort of art flourishes on the designs, and they kind of look like what are those buildings called that are like come out of the mountain wall?
Yeah.
Adobes, which we knew the whole time that's what they were called. Adobes.
You'll need to like play some like commercial break music.
And what are the Adobes? Adobes.
It's pretty interesting, like when the producers like want us to sympathize with like a tribe of people, and like when they want us to like hate people, like it's like very clear.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. It's pretty clear. But it also kind of looks. It could kind of look like the Middle East. I mean, honestly, just and specifically the imagery of just the fact that the towns have been. It's not like just they've been cleared out or anything. The towns have been decimated. Like they have been like totally messed up and they're abandoned.
I tell you, Boyle, this is creepy. Do you think they killed all of them? Well, there are no bodies. They were driven from their homes. I don't think they had a what? Choice.
But yeah, I think that's definitely a focus. I mean, even at the start, Obi-Wan is like, we came here to save the Twi'leks, and that means we can't just blow up their homes. Like, that's like, we can't, not just minimum casualties, But preservation of the land is like something that was important to the Jedi, and that's one of the reasons that Waxer's like, they should just get out of our way. We need to do our jobs. We need rocket launchers. We need bombs. And
they've kind of like, they're like very battle worn, and they're just like, oh God, war would be so much easier if there was no people involved.
Definitely. Yeah, that's
He's right though.
Yeah.
A war with no people would be the quickest war.
They are like created for this battle situation.
Sure. Yeah, that's their whole life is fighting as efficiently as possible.
Yeah.
So I get it. But it's obvious not only in their interactions with the little girl whose name is Numa.
Numa, hey.
Oh God.
Numa.
Only 10 seconds or we'll get a copyright strike. No, we're never going to copyright strike because no one cares about us. Joke's on you. But yeah, in their dealings with Numa, I mean, it's obvious that they don't have a lot of experience. I mean, and then Boyle asks the question like, "Hey, so when we leave, what happens?" And it's just like, who knows? Who cares? Like we're objective oriented. Like we need to save this town, and then whatever happens after is their business. And I think that sort of leads into the next episode as well, but we'll table that for now. But that's their whole point of view, is that save the town, but in terms of the longer standing effects of war and the longer standing costs,
on to the next one.
Yeah, they don't even have the time to really like process anything like that because they're constantly at war. I mean, like, do they get a break where they're not killing people all day? Like,
I guess it's a spoiler, but we see them in later seasons where they're like hanging out at bars and stuff.
Right, but that would be like on their day off, and that's specifically, I think those are like the Coruscant guards. Those aren't like it could be, you could be right though. I don't really remember because that's way later.
They have this like facade of like, oh yeah, we're clones, we're like fighting machines, but like pretty much as soon as they like see something soft and cuddly like this little girl, they're like totally like humane.
Yeah, Waxer's heart is melted like wax. Maybe that was it. Yeah.
Boyle is popped.
Boyle. They boil the wax and then the wax melts.
Wow.
We
got it.
I think we got it.
Like a half hour, but we finally got it.
Cracking the Star Wars codes.
It's just very easy to do.
Right.
But yeah, it ultimately just, it's a really interesting, when you think about it in the broad sense, it's just a really, really interesting challenge to see how two war-focused clones deal with the life of a child. And the characters of Boyle and Waxer are like the perfect polar opposites to see like the both extremes of how they can handle that situation. And obviously, good trumps over evil.
Don't cry, kid. We'll keep you safe. I promise.
And then Numa's reunited with her clan.
Yeah, I think it was I think they just have that moment with one person. So maybe it's like just her dad, maybe it's her uncle. Like we don't really know if like her family could still be like her mom and dad could still be dead. That could just be like her cousin or something, like her dad's friend.
They're probs. Let's just agree that they're dead.
Okay, they're dead. That poor child's family is definitely dead, and she has to live with her weird uncle now. But we do get the nice moment that bookends the episode where like she's been calling Boyle and Waxer this thing the whole time, and then Obi-Wan reveals, oh, she was calling you guys brothers.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's cute. Very like humanizing.
Yeah, definitely.
But I wonder if it's also like one of those inconsistencies that like instead of it being like a Star Wars sucks, it's so inconsistent. It's more just like, no, Star Wars is awesome because it like plays the long game. I feel like we were talking about that in the movies, like the prequel movies, where it's just like, oh, like why did they make the Force like this and the Jedi like this? But it's actually like a larger setup for like how the Jedi is weak, and it's the same with the clones where it's like, I don't really get it, like are the clones or are they humans? But it also shows like it makes sense that the clones would later be turned into stormtroopers because it's just too hard to have them be like fighting machines but also like good fighting machines.
It's weird. It sort of has like the inverse effect because like they're bred to be these perfect soldiers, and it's weird. They're both like so good at being soldiers, but they're also like way more human than almost even the stormtroopers are, you know? So it's it's sort of a really weird dynamic there.
Yeah, it's like they're like the perpetual good guys, but they're also like the perpetual soldier, and it's just like,
it's weird.
How does that work?
Yeah.
But
and the answer is it's messy.
Yeah, exactly. In the last episode, we get more, I feel like, about the Twi'leks. Mm-hmm. What's the last episode called?
Liberty on Ryloth.
Oh, that's what I thought. Liberty on Ryloth.
Yeah, Liberty on Ryloth focuses on Mace Windu, and now that Obi-Wan has successfully cleared the way for the Republic to take back Ryloth, Mace Windu leads an attack against the Separatists and Wat Tambor, who has like the stronghold there on the planet. And in order to do this, he needs the help of Cham Syndulla, who is like a radical figure who we know before from Supply Line. He's not really that radical on that, but it's, you know,
he's Che Guevara.
He's kind of like that.
So I like how in this episode you see a little bit more about the politics within the planet and the leadership in the planet, like the King Julian Lemur episode. And I mean, I think it shows that every planet has their own leadership structures. It's not just the Republic versus the Separatists. It's like a lot more complicated than that, and like each planet is not necessarily like pledging allegiance to like the Republic or the Separatists. They're like not trusting either one.
Yeah, the whole setup is interesting. Just it is only just hinted at, but that there is, you know, some sort of political divide in Ryloth that predates the Clone Wars. Cham Syndulla wants some sort of radical change and wants more freedom for his people. We don't really know what that means or why that's not the case now. You know, we do know that he accuses the senator of not prioritizing the wants of the Twi'lek people. And, you know, if we know anything from the prequel era, it's that, you know, don't trust the senators. They all just want money. So maybe that might have something to do with it.
Yeah, and I at first didn't even think that the senator from Ryloth was a Twi'lek. Because
his anatomy?
Because he's a big boy.
He's a big boy.
Yeah, and I couldn't even tell his tails.
Yeah, I think he also has like 3 tails, which is weird. And then doesn't Bib Fortuna have 1 tail?
I think he has 2.
Does he have tiny tails?
No, he has big tails. He's got like a big elephant ear tails.
I think he has 2, but he just wraps one around towards his neck.
Oh, he uses it like a scarf.
Basically.
Bougie fuck.
He's like asphyxiating himself with his tail, like a classic.
It's a metaphor for how he's choking out the will of his people in the Senate chamber.
And also, like, the depraved senators, like, just need to asphyxiate themselves in plain sight with their tails.
Nice.
Another scummy person that's been pretty relevant for the whole arc that we haven't really talked about is Wat Tambor.
Wat Tambor, my favorite. Beep boop, beep boop, beep boop.
Yeah, at first I was like, oh, we got a voice upgrade because he was doing that a lot less, and then he did it one time, and I was like, no, he didn't.
Wait, is Wat Tambor a bad guy?
Yeah.
He's a separatist.
He's a separatist.
Yeah, he was in Attack of the Clones for 5 seconds.
Okay.
And he's one of like the inner syndicate that are behind the war.
Oh, okay.
He's
like a dirty capitalist scum.
Yeah, basically that's his thing. And I think yes, Count Dooku does say it in Clones. He says that Wat Tambor has like part of the infrastructure that has created the droid army, and they're combining like his infrastructure with the Viceroy Gunray droid army, and that's what's created the clone army. So he's a heavy player, and his capture at the end of this episode is like important politically for the Republic.
He's the one who's like, everyone's like, surrender, and he's like, no, more jewels.
Yeah, I spoke very flatteringly of Wat Tambor in the past because he's so cute and funny. And like his design, I really love his design, and that he speaks in bleep bloops.
And that he walks on a Segway.
Is he like a robot?
He's like We don't know.
He's probably a cyborg.
Yeah, he's probably a cyborg, or it could be that he, like, on his home planet, like, he doesn't need the suit, but when he's, like, out in the world, which he needs to be all the time, he has this suit.
Right.
We don't know, but I like the design. In any case, I think he's probably the dumbest character, even more so than Jar Jar or anyone else, really.
Pepe Bao?
Even more than Pepe Bao. He's the dumbest character in Star Wars so far. 10 episodes in The World Between Worlds, I would place Wat Tambor as, not dumb as in I don't like him, dumb as in, like, in universe, he's probably the stupidest person that we've seen so far.
Stupider than that droid who was, like, you would think because he's a droid he can't...
The tactical droid?
Yeah, he can't, like...
I like the tactical droids in all these episodes.
He's literally just like, fine, if you want to die, that's up to you.
Yeah, the droid just leaves. He's like, Wat Tambor, he is so stupid. Goodbye. And yeah, just Wat Tambor, like, consistently Count Dooku's like, listen, you can't handle Mace Windu. Get out of there now. And he's like, okay. And he's like, I need more jewels. He's like, and then Count Dooku calls again, why haven't you left? Mace Windu is around the corner. He is going to capture you. You know too much. Leave right now. And of course,
Count Dooku is going to give Wat Tambor a spanking.
Yeah, Count Dooku is not happy with really any of his leaders.
No.
They're all pretty incompetent. But I really do think Wat Tambor is the most incompetent. His pretty much every line that he said this episode was a serious failure. It's just our first Mace Windu episode. It's honestly the most time we've ever spent with Mace Windu.
Mace Windu is down with Shay. All the other leadership was like, no, he's a radical. And Mace Windu's like, I don't care.
Yeah, he's
like,
you guys handle the politics, he says. And it's like, we just need whoever's going to help. And this guy's going to help.
But he does some, like, good diplomacy and basically gets them all to give each other their words, whatever that means. But
yeah, true.
But, like, when he sees them doing all their, like, cultural stuff or the way that, like, the resistance within that planet for the Twi'leks is going, he's, like, very respectful and down with it.
Yeah.
But Palpatine is like, no, like, don't partner with him. Like, let's send in more troops. I don't know. It wasn't surprising, but it's nice to see it all the time.
What, like Mace Windu, like...
Just see, like the Jedi
real
that we're
diplomacy?
supposed to, like, sympathize with,
Yeah.
like, just always siding with, like, the indigenous people on planets, basically.
Yeah, that was cool. I agree. I thought it was... probably the most positive light in general we've seen from Mace Windu. Other than, in Attack of the Clones, Mace Windu was pretty
he had a
on the
pretty
ball.
strong presence.
Yeah.
This is probably, I don't know, this is probably like just as focused on Mace Windu. Probably more so. I mean, just, the runtime of Attack of the Clones, Mace Windu's probably in it for 20 minutes as well, but this is more self-contained.
He's a pretty, like, standard character.
Yeah, he's pretty cookie cutter, and even in the Clone Wars, having watched it the whole show, I mean, I think Mace Windu, I kind of wanted to know Mace Windu more. This is probably one of the more intimate times we get to know Mace Windu. There are a couple episodes coming up where we get to know him a little better, but he's pretty just, I have my goals. I'm gonna do what I need to get them done. I'm pretty strong. He's like. Anakin has a line in Attack of the Clones where he's like, Master Windu is like the most powerful sword fighter, and like, he is pretty strong and he can handle himself.
So one of the things that's like currently canon for the expanded universe is Mace Windu has a very specific Jedi power called Vapad, which allows him to basically, he's like in like the perfect balance position of the light side and the dark side. He's like on the light side in a mental state, but he like power wise, he's like kind of just like not really leaning one way or the other. He's like perfectly balanced, and that's
surprising.
Yeah, it's a really interesting character thing that they don't really get into, not even in the Clone Wars. So my whole idea of Mace's force powers that like make him more distinct for this episode, like him shattering the window with his vibration, finding a way to get off that bridge, jumping on platform to platform with like the sound like completely cutting off in that one scene. I think that's clearly an indication that he's like trying to trigger some kind of higher power, or maybe even the dark side, to amplify his abilities.
Wow, I never thought about that with him.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really a concept you would think about, but now that it's like something you can be aware of, looking at all of Mace's actions, it really puts him in like a new light.
He seems very like collected within himself.
Yeah.
Like there's not like a lot of conflict within him. And maybe that's like because he's so at one with like the light side and the dark side of the Force.
I saw an interesting theory that the reason why maybe he doesn't really believe that Anakin is the chosen one is because he believes that he is the chosen one because of how balanced he is internally and like how gifted he is.
Or maybe he also sees like how unbalanced Anakin is with the Force.
Totally.
Well, I think we're always complaining about like imbalance of the Force within the Jedi, so I feel like that's like a cool solution. And Mace Windu, even though he's kind of boring, he's also like very strong within himself and balanced and like powerful and just like a solid guy. He's not as fun as like Obi-Wan, who's like a little fairy boy.
Yeah, yeah. He's a little, he is
just like, I'm a Jedi. He's like, oh, okay, that's who you are.
Yeah,
that's it.
He's like the male equivalent of Luminara.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, or like a little bit above her, I would say. But I like Obi-Wan the best because he's a fairy boy, and I'm also a fairy boy.
Me too.
Me too.
Jack, are you a fairy boy? He definitely is. Why did Palpatine not want to side with Che Guevara? What's his name?
Champ Syndulla.
Champ Syndulla.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I think you do see the senator from Ryloth, I forget his name, but, big blue guy, big blue boy, he is, like, in that inner council with Palpatine a lot. So I think the idea is, A, that Palpatine wants to keep that senator in power, or, in addition to that, B, is that Palpatine knows that Champ Syndulla is a radical and is someone that could potentially oppose him.
Or he like sees through the bullshit.
Yeah, he's someone who can see through the bullshit. And that's something that we know about Cham like straight away is that in this episode there's the really great moment. Cham Syndulla does not want to help the Jedi. He like sees them as an obstacle to true, liberation. And Cham says directly, if we let you march into our city alongside us, how long until I have to fight you to kick you out of my planet?
Right, because he sees him as like an obstruction.
Yeah.
And that's what King Julian thought also.
Exactly, yeah. And in both cases, both of these leaders, we as the audience know that they're right.
Yeah.
But Mace Windu was like, that's a good point. Let me see if I can convince you, to do this anyway.
They're stuck between like a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, because ultimately Mace Windu doesn't convince Cham Syndulla. What convinces Cham is that the Separatists carpet bomb the entire area around them, and they're because they know that now that Mace Windu and Obi-Wan and Anakin have all landed, these are the heavy hitters in the war. The Separatists are going to lose Ryloth. They will no longer be able to occupy that planet. So they're hedging their bets. From the beginning of this third episode, Liberty on Ryloth, Count Dooku's we'll count our losses, but everyone get out of there and let's destroy Ryloth for good.
Well, why do they want to destroy Ryloth?
It's a good question. We don't really know.
These are peaceful people. They must be dead.
Yeah,
well, it probably has something to do with Wat Tambor's jewels. Maybe they have some kind of mining.
Right.
Thing going on there.
Count Dooku basically wants to send a message, is what he says in that. He's like, so show everyone what the cost is for the Republic to be victorious. That's what he says, which I'm not sure makes a lot of sense. But at the end of the day,
if he's trying to get across that, I think he's trying to trick the Republic into destroying their homes in order to save them, which ends up not being what their plan is. But I think that's what Count Dooku was hoping for.
Yeah, it's definitely they're trying to make the best out of a situation and turn it to their advantage. But
that's always the Star Wars antagonist excuse is we have to make an example of these people.
Yeah, but it could possibly be. I mean, so Ryloth in the old EU, if I understand correctly, which is no longer canon, but the original backstory of Ryloth was that it was a planet that was constantly under attack, under stress. And that the people were commonly enslaved routinely either by pirates or whatever. So the idea that Ryloth has this history of being a planet that is always a target.
Well, you get that impression here, whether it's canon or not, that this is a planet that's always been targeted. Just because of the whole Champs and Duel movement of, like,
Sure.
we can't accept any kind of help from anyone because they always just end up getting in the way for us.
Right, exactly. So it could be the case that Count Dooku wants to further cripple Ryloth, and then, the Republic is stuck trying to help this major planet that is constantly like under civil unrest. Like, that could potentially be a destabilizing force for the Republic.
Are they in the inner rim or the outer rim?
It's a good question. I want to say they're in the outer rim, but
Really?
just because they seem like an easy target, I guess. That's sort of the impression that we get, was that they were easy to take over and that they've been routinely oppressed, like, over history. That makes me think they're in the outer rim.
But I was thinking maybe they're a planet in the inner rim that's just like... Because why would they be a major planet?
That's a good question.
Rim?
I don't know. We don't really know.
Even the inner rim needs oppressed planets.
But I think the point is that it's not really important to this story. Because I always thought of it like the line from episode 1 that I already brought up like a couple episodes ago with Shmi talking about how Tatooine doesn't exist for the Republic. So I think since there's not really a Republic presence currently for Ryloth, I would probably say it's in the Outer Rim.
I want to see some more inner rim planets.
I think the biggest roadblock is the budget, which is why we don't see the
Really?
the inner rim, like, rich planets. But
all they can afford is like dusty landscapes
Yeah.
to animate.
yes, but I think we'll probably see more.
First
inner
episode,
rim.
episode 2 is in the Inner Rim.
Cool.
Yes, so
stay tuned.
One thing I wanted to mention was that it seems like the droids have like files on everyone.
I thought that was cool. I mean, it was definitely like, that's another example of like it definitely feeling like a finale. Like, now that we've been in the war so long, like the droids are like, oh, this person is attacking. We fought him like 17 times. Like, let's pull up his file, analyze his strategy. Just makes sense. That should be what the droids are doing.
Yeah, it's it's very organized. I like the idea a lot. But I thought it was interesting because we saw it for Anakin and Obi-Wan, and maybe it happened for Mace Windu as well. I don't remember.
Well, yeah, they looked at Mace Windu's file and said, let's evacuate.
Exactly.
Yeah. So once Mace Windu and Cham Syndulla, once they do decide to align themselves, it's like boom, 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 the city's recaptured. Like, it's pretty
on.
straightforward. It's on. So yeah, Cham is like, presumably like an amazing like guerrilla fighter, because I mean that's all we know about him at this point, is like he has some sort of radical political beliefs we don't exactly understand, but he's also just like this amazing like warrior that Mace Windu has enough respect for, where he's like, this is the guy that's gonna help us.
I'm down with him.
I'm down with him too.
with Champ Syndulla.
Yeah, me too.
I need another one of these like cool independent thinker
Character.
planetary types that are like independent of the two factions.
That's coming up. There's gonna be a lot of
Great, because then we can play Fuck, Marry, Kill.
that with all the radicals.
Yeah, Che Guevara, King Julian, and then I want one more.
All right, it's coming. It's coming.
Cool, excite.
So I know that every season of Clone Wars has like a name to it. What's the name of the first season?
I don't know.
Well, you bring up a good point. Is like, how would you sum up like the whole first season?
That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
Do I think that the different seasons kind of have different themes? Maybe. This one definitely seems to be the most war focused. Yeah.
Really? The other ones are less war focused? I just assumed the whole series was war focused since it's the Clone Wars.
There is, but it like expands out from that.
That's
There's a lot of
good, 'cause
tangents.
It's getting old. It's really getting old.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's a great concept to like explore like what these Clone Wars years were like. But I'm glad that they're gonna.
Some of this stuff was a chore for me.
For me too. Like, just it's a lot of action.
Yeah, and the
I
action gets
understand
boring.
people like action, but it's just like it's the same.
I didn't say anything, but I thought that the third episode in this arc was a lot more boring than the first two. And
I disagree.
I know most of you guys disagree, but there's like, for as much political stuff there is, it's like 50% political and 50% explosions.
I thought that the first episode was more explosions. But I know you like the Ahsoka stuff.
Yeah,
she's not become like a super exciting character for me yet. Like, I know people love her,
Yeah.
but so far I'm
have
it's
to
a
wait
little
for her
bit.
to
I know
handle
she's going to
herself.
become also
people-
her animation, she looks older. Have you noticed that?
I
Doesn't
think
she look a little
I think
bit
so.
older?
I think so. I
than
think
when
it's
she's
also
first
just like it
introduced?
improved, like, you know, like they're constantly, because it's digital, they're constantly tweaking the models
Right.
and getting it to look just
Okay.
right.
I thought she just looks like she aged a little bit.
in my
Why
opinion.
is she called Snips? I don't get that.
In the first movie, she was like Snippy, and then Anakin called her Snips.
I find that to be very weird. It makes me uncomfortable.
It sort of tapers off.
Okay,
One
good.
thing we talked
You are
about.
definitely not the only one that thinks that.
Yeah.
It's weird.
You
I'm
should have.
glad that I'm not the only one.
A lot of people like not even just dislike the first like 2 or so seasons of Clone Wars, but they like hate it. But then everyone
but,
loves
like,
season 3. It's
Star
really weird.
Wars fans are always like, I hate things.
I know.
I hate things.
but specifically-
I hate myself.
But specifically, like some of the things that you guys are talking about, it's like they're pretty common opinions. It's like, oh,
Yay.
Ahsoka is boring, or Ahsoka's too, or this is too kiddie, like this is too childish, or this is too boring. That's a pretty common assessment of like the first 2 seasons.
Yeah, well, but I get their whole business plan is like, let's get new consumers.
Mm-hmm.
New consumers are being born every day. Let's get
Yeah.
them into Star Wars. Like-
Definitely the strongest episodes for me are probably once we get a few seasons more in.
Well, good thing I have nothing but time on my hands to
Me
go
too.
through all these boring episodes.
Me too. Can't wait.
I thought season 1 was, I thought it was pretty like lighthearted fun, a lot less depth than I would hope for, but some of them shed some light. Like Lair of Grievous was a great episode. The Jedi Crash episodes were great, just to like demonstrate new characters that we weren't familiar with before, like the Luminar episode. Just like introducing new people is all I really wanted to see.
Yeah, I think all the new characters have probably been the most fun consistently and the most rewarding as a viewer, just like just watching the world grow in a really organic way and seeing the consequences.
I like Anakin Skywalker having a battle buddy with Captain Rex, the same way that Obi-Wan has Commander Cody.
I mean, well, yeah, and Ahsoka. I mean, like I really think like all the new characters are just like seamless, perfect additions to Star Wars.
Yeah, I agree. It's like doesn't feel awkward. It feels like okay.
Feels natural.
This is the Star Wars. Like I buy it. I mean, I don't think that for me there's any episode that was like a
Stand up.
Bombad Jedi.
except for Bombad Jedi was my favorite episode. But there's no episode that was like, oh, like how deep.
No, there's a lot
But-
less depth.
Yeah, but it's just like I feel like kind of like it's classic sci-fi and that like it makes you think a little bit, but it's also just like cool looking.
In terms of like sci-fi, like serialized regular entertainment, there really isn't something like of this quality that's
Trek.
coming out. But that's coming out right now, like in the past 10 years.
Well,
Like,
there's new Star Trek.
yeah,
But
it's-
I don't watch it.
Yeah, exactly. So like, but that's what I'm saying. Like, is there like high quality? There's
okay.
something of this genre. It's like sort of like a dead art, I think.
What I love about this is that it's a universe.
Yeah.
Like I feel like Star Trek is really good at the whole like utopian, like philosophical things. I mean, most of the episodes of Star Trek are like can't be boring. But like there's 3 episodes every season that are just like, whoa, like that was super deep and like worth it. But Star Trek is very like serialized. But this is like it's serialized, but it's a part of like a whole universe. And that's what I feel like I really like about this is that this and the books and the cartoons and plus the movies, it's like it's this whole universe that gets expanded and like fleshed out and it feels very real. And I don't know of any other sci-fi that's like that that you can watch and just kind of like mindlessly watch to like unwind. Like maybe there's stuff like that that you can read in a book.
Yeah.
But like nothing that you can watch.
Yeah, I agree. I think this type of storytelling and at this level is sort of like old-fashioned. Like, you know, I think this more borrows from like sci-fi books in the 70s and then adventure cartoons like in the
Flash
60s
Gordon
and
was
70s.
serialized, right?
And then Flash Gordon was serialized. So I think it's sort of like all of those old dead things being repackaged in a different way in this 3D animated form. And
It's very like for nerds.
definitely.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I should have said from the beginning, right?
It's like I think that it's kind of more akin to comic books and superheroes than it is akin to like Star Trek or
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Black Mirror, Twilight Zone, or stuff like that. But like, what's so great is it like bridges that gap. Like, it has like more of the sci-fi concepts, which I find more interesting than the superhero concepts. But it's more of that like
Accessibility.
easy accessibility, just like snackable.
Snackable.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like if I wanted to find something that scratches the same itch that Clone Wars does, it would be really difficult to find something like that.
Yeah.
Well,
I
also
agree.
because it's not Star Wars.
Yeah. All right, and that's going to conclude episode 10.
It's going to conclude season 1.
And season 1 of Clone Wars. Yeah, I'm so happy.
Hooray!
Hooray! Not hooray for Jordan.
Fuck Jordan.
Jordan's in the hospital.
Oh, man. Well, we'll just have to visit the hospital next week for when we see Jordan, and we'll be talking about Season 2, Episode 1, Holocron Heist, Season 2, Episode 2, Cargo of Doom, Season 2, Episode 3, Children of the Force. Man, it feels good to say Season 2. We're going forward. All right.
Yes, I think we all feel like children of the Force today.
Wow. Another nuggets of wisdom.
Another happy landing.
Another happy landing. My name is Yates.
My name is Jessica,
My name is Keats.
May the Force be with you.
and also with you.
My name is Jen.